Hey everyone, what do you know? We're all back here together on a lovely sunny day on the computer. We are beginning a really cool journey as we exit ourselves out of fifth grade and into middle school, meaning that we're going to start looking at some of the wild math that can start happening that really is actually no different than what we're already doing. It's just how do we step it back up as we move into middle school? And that is the world of algebra. So we're going to kind of dive into this, which really isn't anything more than what we already know. And that's the four operations of math. I mean, that's really what algebra is. It's just us kind of talking about those four different operations in math, which of course are multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. So it's really just starting to think about what we do with all these operations. And today we're going to talk about evaluating by substitution, which sounds so professional. Excuse me, but I would like to evaluate by substitution. But the reality is just evaluating means to solve, and substitute means to replace, right? So a substitute teacher, if you will. You know how the job is. You know what to do as students. If your teacher is replaced by another person for a day, it doesn't mean you don't know how to do your job. It's just someone else is there helping you through it. And that's really what this means too, is that we might have some different numbers, but it doesn't mean we forget all of a sudden how to multiply, divide, add, or subtract. So let's solve or evaluate through substitution or replacing. So what does that all mean? So let's dive in. So the first part of this to help us is going back to the work we've done all year with equations. And one thing to understand with equations, right, is you are often thinking about having some sort of two or more numbers. So in this case, maybe I have 3, and here I have 12. You have a quality, right, meaning equal to, less than, greater than, whatever. We're going to use equal to. You have a variable, which is like an unknown, right? The variable, that's the unknown. So those are like letters we use, X, Y, W, A, whatever it may be. Let's use A. And then you have an operation, which we just talked about. So let's see what's a color I haven't used for this fun thing. Let's say in this case, we'll multiply. So this is that equation, right? And really what it's asking us is like, can we figure out what A is equal to? Like, what is A? What is A? And so if we looked at it, this is the same. Well, 3 times a number is equal to 12. And since we all know our math facts so well, we now know that that's going to be 4. If we substituted, right? If we substituted A for the letter 4, the number 4, this would be a true statement. 3 times 4, notice I substituted, I took A out and I put 4 in its place, is equal to 12. And that's a true statement. It's true, because 3 times 4 is 12. And over here I have 12, and 12 is equal to 12. So that's already kind of what we're starting to do when we have an equation. We've known this, we've done this, we've written equations all year with our story problems. And now we understand it's like, oh, that's what I'm doing. I'm actually substituting. I'm evaluating, I'm solving through substitution. Now that we know that, let's also go to expressions, because that's actually where we're going to see this work at its height of it. And so, boy, so much to talk about. So expressions, if you remember now, are often 2 numbers with no equal, no answer. So an expression here would be this: 7 more than 13. That's an expression, right? The 3 times 5. That's an expression. Again, notice there's no equal sign. There's no answer. And now where we take this further is we're actually starting to then take these expressions and we start to say, well, now we have a variable. So 13 plus a and 3 times a. Okay, well, maybe we didn't know these numbers. And one thing we can also notice right now is that this variable is the same. So this number has to be the same. And so this is now where we evaluate through substitution. This is actually the skill itself, because then we're giving these two expressions. But what we're saying is that, listen, a is equal to 6. So what they're saying is every time I see a, in this case, not your whole life, we have to substitute a with the number 6. So if I look at my first example, and I'm going to solve, right? So first I'm going to substitute and then I'm going to evaluate. So I'm going to solve. So if I rewrite this, I still have 13. And now instead of a, I'm going to substitute it for this 6. And if I solve that, if I evaluate it, well, 13 plus 6 is equal to 19. So that would be my answer. So I don't know. This is number 1. Here's number 2. So number 2, same thing. I'm going to rewrite it 3 times. Now, instead of a, I'm going to substitute a with the number 6, and I'm going to evaluate. So 3 times 6 is 18. And that's what this work is. That's what it means. We actually end up with an expression that, in this case, our expressions have a variable, and then our variable has a value, and then we substitute, and then we evaluate. So we are going to substitute. That feels like a weird word all of a sudden. Substitute. Is that right? Okay, and then evaluate. Oh, you know how it's weird? Like you use a word a lot and then it starts to feel weird. Anyway, okay. Oh, evaluation. Yeah, which means solve. Okay, cool. So let's play with one of those. Let's do another one. So let's say in this case, we have the expression 12 plus b. And someone says, hey, you know what? I need you to evaluate this problem. But in this scenario, b is going to be equal to 5. So all the b's that you see in this, I need you to substitute them with 5. You're like, okay, cool, I got this. Thank you for those orders. So 12 stays the same, plus, well, not b anymore, because I'm going to substitute 5 for that b. And then I just evaluate or solve, and I get 17. Okay, so substitute and then evaluate. So replace it, then solve it. So I don't know, let's try another one. Let's bump it up, because again, we know we're multiplying, dividing, adding, or subtracting. So we're using all these. So we just used addition. Let's bump this up a little bit. I'm actually going to stay on this page and erase this and keep working. So let's do another. So someone, again, because there's always just someone randomly walking down the street giving you expressions, and someone says, oh, you know what? I need to know what p cubed is. What's p to the power of 3? What's p cubed? And you're like, cool, well, I can't evaluate that unless you give me something to substitute. And they're like, oh yeah, you're right, because this is a total normal conversation you have with someone on the street. Well, in this case, let's say that p is equal to the number 2. And then you're like, oh, cool, I got this. So I'm going to substitute. So I'm going to rewrite this. So instead of p, I have 2. And that's the 3rd power. And now I evaluate. Well, remember with exponents, right? What that means is I have my base number 2, and I write it 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And exponents are a form of multiplication. So that actually means I am multiplying each one of these. So to help me evaluate, I'm going to say 2 times 2 is 4. And then 4 times 2 is 8. So if someone said, hey, can you evaluate p cubed, where p is equal to 2, you would be like, oh, well, that's 8. Obviously, right? Okay, so a little more complex. Let's do another. Why not do another? Let's see here. Sorry, as I erase, I'm like trying to think of one. How about this? Oh, let's take it to like a math algebra middle school thing. Let's say in this case we have the expression 7n. Okay. Now this is tricky because you could look at this and be like, oh, okay, I don't even know what that means. And it's true because we haven't really talked about this. And you're like, well, okay, that's fine, but I have to substitute. Well, in this case, n is equal to 11. So for me to evaluate, I have to substitute. Now, the first thing you might want to do, right? This is very common mistake we would make is like, okay, well, in place of n, I put 11. So my answer is 711. Right? That makes sense to me. That would make sense. But that's not right. In fact, one of the tricky things about algebra in middle school, one of the things you got to look out for is this scenario when you have a variable and a number right next to each other like this. It actually means there's like this invisible parenthesis there, which then actually means you're multiplying these two numbers. This is actually another way to show multiplication. We talked about this year, which is crazy, that the multiplication has so many different symbols. I could do this, right? I could do the traditional X. We could do the little dot. And then you can also say a number times another number like this, which is crazy. So actually this right here means we're multiplying. So double dip, double lesson. So when I substitute, what that means is then, okay, we're going to get rid of n. And in its place, we're going to put in 11. And then what we just learned is this is actually multiplication. So 7 times 11 is 77. So if I evaluate the expression 7n, where n is equal to 11, well, then I get 77. With me? Got me? Making sense? If not, that's okay, because we just started, and this is big stuff. So let's try another. Let's do a little more evaluation and substitution. Remember, evaluation is just a fancy word for solve. Okay, how about we do, let me try to write y divided by 5. Whereas if we are evaluating, y is going to be equal to 15, right? So step 1, substitute. So I'm just going to rewrite this. And instead of y, I'm going to write 15. And the 5 stays the same. And this is just a top-heavy fraction, which I can convert by dividing because fractions are division problems. So 15 divided by 5, that is going to be equal to 3. So when I evaluate this, I get the answer 3. That's it. That's all we're doing. That's all evaluation is. It's a substitution, and then we solve. And that's when we evaluate by substitution. There's other forms of evaluation. There's other forms of solving. But in this case today, what we're really focusing on is how do we substitute a variable with a value, with a number, and then go ahead and solve it. So we're going to quit with one more. Wait, that sentence doesn't make sense. We're going to do one more and then we'll end. Quit with one more. What does that even mean? Oh my goodness. Okay, we're going to do one more. That's the whole point of my entire ramble here. So let's do that. Let's do that. I'm going to make this one a little more complex. Let's say we have Q. Notice we put that little tail on it so it doesn't look like a 9. Let's say Q divided by 3 plus 4. So now we're bumping it up because our expression has more than like one step in it. Notice in this case, we're going to end up having to divide, then we'll have to add. So let's do that. First, we are going, oh, wait, we don't even know what Q equals. Q is equal to 3. Okay. Now we can substitute now that we know, right? And okay, so I'm going to substitute. So I'll rewrite this whole problem, but this time instead of Q, I'm going to substitute it for 3. So that means 3 divided by 3 plus 4. One thing I want you to notice is I'm rewriting the whole thing. Even if I could start to do this in my head, it doesn't make sense to do that because I'm going to get confused and lose track of my steps. So I highly recommend just rewrite it as you know it. Don't try to solve it yet. And then sit back and go, okay, now what? Well, according to our order of operations, which we're going to talk about more, I need to make sure I take care of this division first. And so 3 divided by 3 is equal to 1. And then 1 plus 4 is equal to 5. So if I evaluate Q divided by 3 plus 4, where Q equals 3, well, my answer is 5. Honestly, listen to me say that again because it sounds so fancy, but really this math isn't, right? It sounds so crazy. Oh, evaluate Q divided by 3 plus 4 when Q is equal to 3. Well, okay, all that means is get rid of Q, replace it with a 3, and then just do the math you already know how to do. It's pretty cool. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. That, my friends, is evaluating by substitution. And that is the work that we will be doing. So that's the start of it. Again, you know how it rolls. If it's confusing, by all means, ask questions. If it's confusing, watch the video again. If it's confusing, practice a few problems. Ask for some practice problems in class. Look for it on homework. Do the work in class. These things will help you make more sense of that. And as always, we appreciate you. Thanks for stopping by, and we shall see you at the next video.